So there was a request to go through the Bhavanasutta. Second. Which is in the from the numbered discourses. And this is, so bhavana means cultivation. So, and this is where we get Bhikkhu Sujato's. Has everyone got the sutta? Is everyone, maybe we could put a link to it just in case somebody hasn't seen it. Can you do that for me, Lucy?
Yeah,
thanks.
I can do that.
And so really, in essence, this is a very simple sutta. There's lots we could go through in terms of the 37 requisites for enlightenment, which is what the Buddha describes here. And I'm going to see if I can put across quite how, despite all these lists, how simple actually what the suggestion is here. So it's the Bhavanasutta, which Bhikkhu Sujato has translated as committed to development. So if you think of it as a kind of cultivation, the cultivation of the path, the cultivation of the spiritual qualities that are required in order to see through the illusion of life and come to a better understanding of it. So I'll just start going through. Mendicants, which is another word for monks. Mendicants, when a mendicant is not committed to development, they might wish, if only my mind were freed from the defilements by not grasping. Even so, their mind is not freed from defilements by not grasping. Why is that? You should say, it's because they're undeveloped. Undeveloped in what? The 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, the 4 right efforts, the 4 bases of psychic power, the 5 faculties, the 5 powers, the 7 awakening factors, and the Noble Eightfold Path. And then he gives us this analogy. Suppose there was a chicken with 8 or 10 or 12 eggs, but she had not properly sat on them to keep them warm and incubated. Even if that chicken might wish, if only my chicks could break out of the eggshell with their claws and beak and hatch safely. Still, they can't break out and hatch safely. Why is that? Because she has not properly sat on them to keep them warm and incubated. In the same way, when a mendicant is not committed to development, they might wish, if only my mind was freed from the defilements by not grasping. Even so, their mind is not freed from defilements by not grasping. Why is this? You should say, it's because they're undeveloped. Undeveloped in what? The 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, the 4 right efforts, the 4 bases of psychic power, the 5 faculties, the 5 powers, the 7 awakening factors, and the Noble Eightfold Path. So we'll stop there and we'll start to define some terms. Just a reminder that if you want to answer a question or to make an observation, there is the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen, and you just press that, and then I see that you're waving your hand, and I can come and, we can talk about it. So the first question then, what do we mean by defilements? What is it that we're trying to do by walking the Noble Eightfold Path? Dave, hello.
I understood it to mean greed, hatred, and delusion.
Okay, greed, hatred, and delusion. What are those qualities themselves rooted in?
Ignorance.
Ignorance. Excellent. Awija. So ignorance is of two kinds. Ignorance is not knowing and not seeing. It's because we do not know and do not see the true nature of reality, we misapprehend, we misperceive the nature of reality, and that is delusion. And out of that delusion then comes a sense of dissatisfaction, a recognition of unsatisfactoriness, and a profound desire to find happiness and peace and well-being through passionately desiring things to be different than they are. That passionate desire for things to be different than they are is the arising of craving, greed, hatred, and then you get a whole plethora of subsequent defilements that come from those basic roots. So from ignorance, we get the greed, hatred, and delusion. And from the greed, hatred, and delusion, we then get the manifold expression of these defilements, and our minds become defiled, and it's very difficult to see the truth of things as they really are. So there's a two-stage process in terms of overcoming defilements. We need to learn, so we need to develop the ability to clean the mind of the conscious expression of those defilements, which we call hindrances. So it's learning how to deal with the hindrances. So we wipe the mind clean of these defiling qualities as they express themselves, in order that we can then explore and investigate deeply the true nature of life and dig up the roots, the very roots of greed, hatred, and delusion that then create the defiling states beyond those. So we have to get right back to the original ignoring, the original not knowing and not seeing the true nature of reality. And through that realization of the true nature of reality, we expunge, we eliminate, we deal with those defilements permanently. Yeah. So that's the purpose of the training. So what do we mean by not grasping then? Who wants to have a go at that one? What is freedom through not grasping? What do we mean by not grasping? Les, hello, Les.
Greetings, not grasping, just to accept things as they are, as they arise, just accept them, but not to cling to, not to hold on to. Let be.
Okay, in what way do we hold on to things? What is the basis for our holding on to things?
Our ignorance, this idea of self, of I.
Yes, yeah, I like that. You're getting a lot warmer there. So it's the grasping after these things as being me or mine or myself, in ignorance of the fact that they're transient, in ignorance of the fact that they are actually ungraspable. They're transient, they're ungraspable, they're fundamentally unsatisfactory. So to grasp after them in terms of a suitable basis for my happiness is impossible, because they're always going to let you down. And to regard them as being me, mine, myself, to identify them as being myself. So those three things. Yeah, excellent. So what we mean by non-grasping then is to essentially let all these objects that we see and know, let them go free from the tyranny of our misperceptions, perceiving them as being me or mine or myself. Okay. So I was just adjusting the sound there. Everyone was a bit quiet. Okay. So that is in a nutshell what the path is. It is the exploration from a place of acceptance and contentment with what is. So learning not to fight with reality, but just to rest with the reality, but being awake, being alert, being interested, being fascinated, to explore unfolding reality and all the various objects and phenomena that arise in our experience, in order to go through this process of investigation, in order to see that it is all transient, it is all fundamentally ungraspable, it is all fundamentally not self. And in doing so, we release ourselves from the ignorance that creates these defilements. Okay, so very straightforward. Not hard at all. Except, of course, we know it's hard, a hard thing to do. So then we come on to the Buddha saying that the reason that you might very well wish to be free of defilements by not grasping, however, even though you may wish it and think it, that does not mean that you are free from defilements by not grasping. One thing to do with all of this, with every sutta you read, the Buddha never says anything for no reason. So we've got to think about this carefully and ascertain what was the prompt for the Buddha giving this particular discourse. I'll leave that for you to think about as you go along. Annie, you have your hand up. Did you had a comment you wanted to make? Sorry, you're on mute. I don't know why I'm apologizing. It's not my fault. You're on mute.
Okay.
Yeah, go.
It was absolutely at the time when you said about what are we grasping, and I obviously I don't want to extend this unnecessarily, so I immediately was thinking of a conversation I'd previously had with my brother. I mean, ideologies, I mean certainly things like patriotism and political agendas. I mean, it's very difficult in the conventional world. I mean, how do you kind of negotiate this, saying no, I'm not going to believe in anything at all. It's sort of I'm not going to.
It's a great point you make. I think the deeper you go into this training, the more you start to see how transient and ungraspable and frankly uncontrollable life is, and you realize there is this lovely what I was saying before the meditation about faith being like this sense of golden sureness, but it's like this sense of sureness and confidence about life, even though everything is in apparent chaos around you. There is this deep-seated sense in which everything is actually operating according to deep laws. It's not chaotic, it just appears chaotic because we haven't properly examined it. And so the more you do that, the less inclined you are to grasp after and hold on to worldly views. They just start naturally to fall away. So once somebody has passed what we call stream winning, all their political agendas have fallen by the wayside. They're just, and it just doesn't really become terribly relevant anymore. You see deeper and you realize that all these views are actually the product of ignoring. They are themselves defiling. And you appreciate completely that other people are going to have these views and believe in them and see the world through those views. It's just you learn just to nod politely, sagely go, yes, right, that's really interesting, and not really enter into it beyond that. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I've clearly, as I say, got a long way to go. I mean, this is a problem, isn't it? I won't extend this any further because I absolutely take on board what you're saying. Yes, I believe that. So, when someone says, well, I don't believe in karma, you think, okay, right. And yes, I think we should boycott Costco, and I think we should definitely boycott. And I'm thinking, oh my God,
Yeah, so, all of which are actions which will produce results.
So. Exactly, they will, but not particularly good ones.
Exactly. This is why we practice. We're practicing in order to deepen our awareness of the truth that our actions have results, and which actions produce which results. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so then we come to this list of 7 different lists, which is beguiling, which is sort of like Theravadan Buddhism squared, isn't it? It's like Theravadan Buddhism maxing out. It's not just a list, it's a list of lists, which create a total of 37 factors, because you've got 4 kinds of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 right efforts, the 4 iddhipada, or basis of psychic power, the 5 spiritual faculties, the 5 spiritual powers, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the Noble Eightfold Path. So that makes 37 different spiritual factors, which the Buddha is saying the lack of development in those 37, what he called the 37 requisites of enlightenment, the absence of those, their undeveloped nature is what causes people to grasp. Yeah, and after defilements, and therefore the ignorance that produces defilements just continues. And so we can go into any depth you like with regard to these 37 requisites of enlightenment as they appear in this list of 7 lists. I would like to talk about at some stage how it is you need a subtle approach to these lists. By all means, learn them verbatim intellectually, but you just have to be very judicious and very careful in the way that you apply them in terms of practicing. I think it is useful just to lightly go over the top of them so that we know what we're talking about in terms of these, because essentially the Buddha is saying you are a hen and there are 37 eggs that you've got to brood and care for. So I think you ought to know what those 37 eggs are that you're going to be sitting on, or that you are sitting on. So who's brave enough to tell me what the 4 foundations of mindfulness are? Leslie, you still have your hand up. Is there another point you wanted to make? Okay. Jim, hello. Good evening.
Hi, Paul.
Hiya.
Yeah, this is the list composed of body, feelings, states of mind, and content of mind.
Okay, so the 4 foundations of mindfulness, absolutely correct. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, foundational, they are 4 very broad categories that you can apply to the development of mindfulness. Remember, what we're doing when we're practicing mindfulness is we're just mindfully noting the most obvious thing in our experience at any given moment. Usually, the most obvious thing are material elements, the body, tactile sensations, sounds, and the like. So that's what we mean by mindfulness of body. Also, feelings are usually very evident. The Buddha takes out feelings from the panoply of mental experience and treats them on their own merits as a foundation of mindfulness, because all craving arises out of feelings. So we are greedy for pleasant feelings, we are hateful and wish to get rid of painful feelings, and we ignore completely neutral feelings. And so you have mindfulness of feelings. Then you have mindfulness of states of mind, which are the general state of your mind, whether you're feeling happy or sad or annoyed or bored or frustrated or whatever it might be. So that's mindfulness of states of mind. And then you finally have the 4th, which is mindfulness of content of mind, which is not content of your thinking. It's actually which of the 5 hindrances am I running, which of the 7 factors of enlightenment are occurring. So it's the foundation of mindfulness that really is the Dhamma, the Buddha's teaching, and seeing things like, I don't know, one of the 4 noble truths in operation. So they go through various stages of subtleties. So mindfulness of Dhammas is the most subtle stage. Mindfulness of body is the grossest, most obvious stage. Excellent. So that's in the list. So you have to understand that. Who would like to offer a very quick overview of the 4 right efforts? Because I'm sure you've all done your preparation for this Pali Canon class. Jim's on fire. You want to give it another go, Jim?
Yeah, I did do a bit of preparation. I don't know if these are in order, but it's letting go of inefficient states that have arisen, preventing inefficient rates that have not arisen from arising,
Good.
allowing efficient states that are trying to arise, and allowing efficient states that have arisen to continue.
Yeah, to cultivate them. Yeah,
Cultivate them, yeah.
maturity, growth. Yeah, yeah. So it's going back to what we were saying earlier. There is, when you start to practice mindfulness, you start to become aware of which are the skillful activities and which are the unskillful activities by reason of the kind of results that they produce. So, if you start to meditate, you will become more aware of ethical action. We're taking responsibility, and we take responsibility for, say, our wrong speech. And we realize that we're trying to sit down to meditate, and we feel really uncomfortable, and there's something we don't want to look at, and we finally look at it, and we realize, oh, I'm experiencing the painful results of having had that verbal altercation at work earlier today. And as a consequence of repeated instances of that, you start to realize that I prefer it if I restrain my speech, because if I restrain my speech, then I don't experience these painful results. And so there is this natural, organic recalibrating of one's ethical standards, if I can put it like that. So you learn what's unskillful, you learn what's skillful, and you start to choose more wisely. Brilliant. Excellent. This is a challenging one. The next one, the 4 bases of psychic power, the Iddhipada. I do remember doing a talk on the Iddhipada probably about 3 years ago or sometime. Can anyone tell me what the 4 Iddhipada are? Who's going to give it a go? Mark, hello.
Hi there. This one foxed me a little bit, but I think the 4 are clarity of purpose.
No.
No?
The 4 clear comprehensions.
In that case, I don't know.
Have a good list.
Oh yeah, we did have a good list.
the 8th list in a list of 7.
No, don't know it then.
Thanks, Mark. Peter, do you want to go?
Right. I think it's along the lines of seeing things at a distance, clear vision.
No,
clear
sorry.
overview.
No, incorrect. I mean,
Okay.
it's on Wikipedia. Iddhipada, Jim.
Right.
Yeah, concentration of intention,
Good,
concentration of energy,
good.
concentration of consciousness, and concentration of investigation.
Excellent. Yes. All connected with activities of striving, according to the Buddha. So, yeah. So we're given this term, the basis of psychic power, and it makes it sound very exotic and mystical. But we actually employ them routinely. I think I gave a talk, I don't want to go too deeply into all of this, but I gave a talk where I used the analogy of driving to the meditation center and how we actually employ versions of these 4 Iddhipada just to get to the meditation center. So the concentration of intention, I've got to get to the meditation center. The concentration of energy, driving the car to the center using the accelerator pedal. Concentration, consciousness, which is actually purifying the mind in order to be able to see what you're doing. So I liken that to using the windscreen wiper. And the concentration and investigation, it's like you're looking out of the windscreen, you're looking at your route, you're making adjustments as you go along in order to reach your destination. So that's a very brief overview of the 4 Iddhipada, but you can see how they're employed in meditation. We want to clarify the mind of all defiling states, the conscious expression of these defiling states, so we have a clear mind so that we can investigate what's actually taking place in our experience. Excellent, good. Right. The five, well, we call them the five spiritual faculties. Who can tell me what the five spiritual faculties are? Dave?
Faith, energy, investigation, concentration, mindfulness.
Yeah, we normally put them in the order faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and investigation. But it is those five. Mindfulness oversees. Faith is this quality of confidence in what you're doing. Energy is applying, either putting more energy in or loosening the energy off, adjusting energy as you go along in order to maintain a balance. Concentration is obviously focus, fixing the mind on what you had intended to do. And investigation is the exploration of states as they are arising. And so you can see that this everything that we're talking about is absolutely germane to the meditative practice. And I will endeavor to help simplify all this for you. Right. Now, if you've just been listening, somebody should be able to tell me what the five spiritual powers are then. If the five spiritual faculties are faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and investigation, what are the five powers? Peter, hello.
Hello. Hopefully, I won't sneeze in the middle of this. The powers are the perfection, are brought to perfection of the five faculties, I believe.
Okay, very good.
Thank
At
you.
the point of stream winning, the five spiritual faculties, which have been developed through this process of mindful observation, become powers. And they become powers by virtue of being that their opposites are now unable to overcome them. So on the first path, faith is always being tested with doubt. Right? So sometimes the faith is in the ascendancy, sometimes the doubt is in the ascendancy. Is this going anywhere? Is it really real? Am I just wasting my time? That's all threatening and that's a corrosive influence on the path. But once somebody has their first glimpse of nibbana, when they go through the supramundane path and fruition at the end of the stream winning path, now doubt does not have the ability to overcome faith, because somebody has seen and understood that there indeed is a beyond of this state of affairs. So they know that the nibbana is real. Therefore, they know that the Buddha was indeed the Buddha, and that his teaching is real and it is effective, and that the third noble truth is real. And so at which point doubt can never overcome, faith can never be overcome by its opposite. And then that becomes true of the other four spiritual faculties. So they all become powers at that point. Excellent. Right. The 7 factors of enlightenment. This is such a good list. Well, they're all good lists, but this is an extremely helpful list to know. Who can tell me what the 7 factors of enlightenment are? Mark. Redemption.
Yeah, he's back for more, see. So these are the mental formations of mindfulness,
Yep.
investigation, balanced energy,
Yes.
joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity.
Yeah, that was the 7, wasn't it, I think? And so there is this, to this list, there is this delightful ordering. So to be mindful, you have to mindful note. So there is inevitably investigation. The balanced energy comes from the investigation being content with just investigating what arises naturally. So you're receptive and you're allowing experience to arise and then noting it. And that's the lovely balance. When you get that lovely balance, pleasurable interest, so it's really piti, it's pleasurable interest, fascination with that investigation arises because the mind is fascinated. It is, where have we got to? We're missing one, aren't we? Are we missing one? So the mind becomes tranquil. Hang on, so mindfulness, investigation, balanced energy, piti. Oh no, that's right. Tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. So because there is fascination, there is no desire for life to be different than it is at that time. So the mind becomes tranquil because it's not restless at all, because it's content with life being as it is. Because it's content as it is, there's a happiness, a peace there, and those are the conditions upon which the mind concentrates most easily. So concentration and focus come more easily because of that tranquility, and that concentration then allows for the emergence of equanimity, which is just the even-minded acceptance of whatever's arising. And then, because there's equanimity with whatever's arising, that makes mindfulness and mindful noting that much easier. And so you find yourself going through the loops, those 7 factors looping again and again. So that's why that list is so important. Excellent, thank you, Mark. And then finally, we have the Noble Eightfold Path. So who is able to tell me the 8 constituents of the Noble Eightfold Path? Who's feeling brave? I mean, everyone should know the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Jim? Can't hear you, Jim.
All right. I guess the most I have, it starts with right view, right aspiration, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration.
Excellent. Thank you. That's your monastic training coming back just when you needed it. Everyone should know the Noble Eightfold Path. And maybe it's a failing on my part, that people don't appear to know what those 8 factors are. So you can divide those 8 factors into 3 trainings: training in wisdom, training in ethics, and the training in mental development. Okay. And those are your 37 factors. You'll find that some of those factors occur a significant number of times, like energy, for instance. You've got energy that features obviously in the 4 right efforts. It's one of the psychic powers, that's 5. It's one of the 5 faculties, that's 6. It's in the 5 powers, that's 7. It's in 7 factors of enlightenment, that's 8. And it's in the Noble Eightfold Path. So energy appears 9 times in that list. Just out of interest. So those are your 37 eggs that you have to sit on. What do we make of this analogy that the Buddha uses, illustrating these as eggs that the hen sits on? What does that suggest to you about what we're being asked to do, Les?
Hen just sits in one position and is allowing the process of the development of the egg to take place. without any real effort. She's just sitting there, allowing it to occur. And
Now,
basically,
yeah, absolutely. So it's exactly that. I don't know much about hens and what they do when they sit on eggs. Do they turn them occasionally? Do they maybe just turn it? I don't know. But whatever they do, it's minimal, isn't it? It's not excessive. Who is it, or what? How is it that those eggs are, I want to say getting cooked? That's not the right expression. How is it those eggs are coming to maturity? They will come to maturity naturally. The hen just has to fulfill her end of the bargain. And I think this is such an important point, because I think the majority of meditators, what they would do if they were looking after those eggs, they would be constantly fidgeting and pushing the eggs about and moving them around and trying to get them hotter and trying to get them warmer and doing all kinds of things, interfering with the process. And I say again, what do you think lies behind why the Buddha is offering this particular discourse? I think one of the problems that meditators have is the belief that they have to do the path, that they have to somehow magically be responsible for the development of all these 37 requisites of enlightenment, that it all has to be under their power, it all has to be under their control. Mark, going back to you were just about to give us the list of the 4 clear comprehensions, and I said that wasn't the Iddhipada. But one of those, the 4th of those 4 clear comprehensions is what we call clear comprehension of non-delusion. And so it's clearly comprehending that if you fulfill your end of the bargain, if you are willing to sit, to rest content in the moment, or if you're doing a task mindfully, you can, do the task mindfully, but you're still content, and you're content just to allow experience to arise and just to note what's going on. If you're willing to do that, every one of those eggs will hatch. Every one of those 37 requisites of enlightenment will mature. And that's what I mean about simplifying everything. Now, I'm not saying that you can't utilize aspects of this list. 5 spiritual faculties, really helpful to know how to balance those faculties. It's really helpful to know the 7 factors of enlightenment and how to adjust what you're doing accordingly. But you will develop all 37 of those requisites anyway, if you follow the instruction to rest content in the moment, whatever you're doing, and be content to mindfully note what's actually taking place in your experience. Yeah. So I gave the example of ethically how your ethics changes simply through being willing to be mindfully aware of actions and the results that come from them. I mean, essentially, you can say that through the attempt to be mindful, you gain the wisdom as to which actions are skillful and which actions are unskillful. So in that process, what you have done, you have walked the Noble Eightfold Path because you have developed your ethics, you've developed your mind, your samadhi, and you've developed your wisdom. Yeah. And that makes, for me, that makes the path doable. Because otherwise we're trying to be Buddhas before we're Buddhas. We're trying to be more clever than we are. It's a very difficult thing to juggle 37 eggs. You don't have to juggle 37 eggs. You just have to sit on them. See the point I'm making? Annie, you've got a question? Can't hear you, Annie. I can't hear you, Annie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice analogy, Paul, but we're not hens. The problem, being human being as opposed to a hen. I might sound unnecessary to say that, but
Yeah, it's an analogy. You don't want to take analogies too far.
right, okay.
Okay. Giuseppe, hello.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say that that has really struck a chord with me. Because when you ask the question, um, what do you think he's saying with this hen sitting on these eggs? My immediate response inside was, well, obviously we have to be doing something. There's something that we definitely need to be doing with those eggs, and that. And I didn't, I must have heard that analogy before, but I've never thought about what hens do with eggs, to be honest. I mean, but now that you mention it, they do just have the faith to sit on those eggs,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
something magical happens that we
No.
don't know about, and the eggs hatch. And I swear to you, the next question preceding that, before you explain that, which answers it, I was going to say, well, again, it comes back to my head. Well, what is right effort? Because effort sounds
Yeah.
like you have to do so much.
No.
So I'm just like, really, yeah, it's sort of hit a major, major nail on the head for me, this one.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that is the point I'm making, and I think the Buddha is trying to make the same point. I think this is about faith. I think this is very much about faith. The clear comprehension of non-delusion, the realization that if you fulfill your end of the bargain, the path will get done. And it's because it has to be brought in to within our capabilities. It has to be possible for the least intellectual amongst us to be able to realize the truth of things as they really are. Like I can't remember his name now, Chula Pandika, who had been given this 4-line verse to remember, but he can only ever remember one line. And if he tried to remember the second line, then the first line would fall out of his head. And yet the Buddha knew that he was still capable of realizing enlightenment, because everyone is, because it is only the realization of what we are. So that development, remember, this is being committed to the development. That development is possible for everyone. And you don't have to be this superhuman, amazing, spiritual, super person who can juggle 37 eggs at the same time. You just have to be able to apply yourself to mindfully noting the next thing that's going to arise.
I'm so happy that I've heard this. It's unbelievable. I mean, that in itself has helped me realize so much, because I kind of tense a bit and get a bit scared when you mention lists, which is why I kind of smiled and laughed a bit when you said, like, this is the lists to end all lists, because it was like, oh my goodness, there's like a whole thing of 37 lists now.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh, that's yeah.
Thank you.
I wonder, and I think I answered my way out of this when I pondered it. Would it be possible if you just told somebody just to sit and mindfully note whatever comes up next, and just keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that, and you gave them no other information about the Buddha's teaching whatsoever? would they realize enlightenment? And I think possibly it does really, really help, though, to know that there are Four Noble Truths. It does really, really help to know that contact conditions feeling, and feeling conditions craving, and craving conditions grasping. So to give no teaching whatsoever, I think would be an error. But I think the amount you actually need to know intellectually is a lot smaller than you think. And that, no, you don't have to somehow magically keep all those eggs in the air all at the same time. All you have to do is rest content in the moment, watching things arise and pass away. I've said it so many times. Okay. All right. So that then makes a completely different sense of this sutta then, see? He carries on. In the same way, when a mendicant is, when a mendicant is committed to development, they might not wish, if only my mind was freed from the defilements by not grasping. So the thought just simply doesn't occur to them. Even so, their mind is freed from defilements by not grasping. So even though they're not desperate to realize enlightenment, yet they do realize it. Why is that? You should say it's because they are developed. Developed in what? The four kinds of mindfulness meditation, the four right efforts, the four bases of psychic power, the five faculties, the five powers, the seven awakening factors, and the Noble Eightfold Path. Suppose there was a chicken with 8 or 10 or 12 eggs, and she properly sat on them to keep them warm and incubated. Even if that chicken doesn't wish, if only my chicks could break out of the eggshell with their claws and beak and hatch safely. Still, they can break out and hatch safely. Why is that? Because she properly sat on them to keep them warm and incubated. In the same way, when a mendicant is committed to development, they might not wish, if only my mind was freed from the defilements by not grasping. Even so, their mind is freed from defilements by not grasping. Why is that? You should say it's because they are developed. Developed in what? The four kinds of mindfulness meditation, the four right efforts, the four bases of psychic power, the five faculties, the five powers, the seven awakening factors, and the Noble Eightfold Path. And so what I'm suggesting is that all those will be developed through the practice of mindful noting with an attitude of contentment. And that contentment includes the willingness for whatever wants to arise. Now, I go back to what I was saying about defilements. If only it was that simple. What we have to do is recognize that those defilements will arise as we are trying to practice. Yeah, because the roots have not been, you can't get rid of the roots before you start practicing. The whole point of the practice is to deal with the roots. So there will be the conscious expression of defilements as you go along. And so what holds up the process and what takes the time is learning to include those defilements, to stop fighting with them, to stop scrambling the eggs, to include them, to allow them. And gradually, as you do that, as you become more accustomed to that, the mind settles down more easily and you're able to continue with the mindful noting. So essentially what we're saying is it takes time because of the influence of ignorance, craving and hatred, and the defilements that arise on top of those. Yeah. And so now we find that the Buddha giving a couple more analogies to help his students. And so I think from this, we can then gauge why he was giving this particular discourse. So the first illustration he uses is this. Suppose a carpenter or their apprentice sees the marks of his fingers and thumb on the handle of his adze. Is that an adze? Is that, I don't know how you say it, but it's like an axe. So they've got a wooden axe. They don't know how much of the handle was worn away today, how much yesterday, and how much previously. They just know what has been worn away. In the same way, when a mendicant is committed to development, they don't know how much of the defilements were worn away today, how much yesterday, and how much previously. They just know what has been worn away. I think that's such an amazingly helpful illustration. Like if you look back, you can only really tell in terms of your development, in inverted commas, based on how you feel now about life compared to how you felt about life before you started the Buddha's teaching. So it is such a gradual development. It's such a gradual wearing away and eradication of these defilements, that from meditation to meditation, from retreat to retreat, you might not be able to tell. But over the course of days, the weeks, the months, the years, you will come to see that indeed the way you look at life, the way, not so much whether you experience suffering, but your ability to recover. So I use the analogy as a bit like learning to run. When you first go out to run, you come back, you're exhausted, and it takes you all day to recover. If you persist with running, each time you get back from your run, you still feel exhausted, but your powers of recovery change dramatically, even within a short space of time of running. And so that's how you can tell that there's been development. Yeah. Your power of recovery, to how quickly you're able to recognize you've just fallen in that hole again, and you're able to jump back out of that hole. Yeah. And then he uses one final illustration. Suppose there was a seafaring ship bound together with ropes. For 6 months, they deteriorated in the water. Then in the cold season, it was hauled up on dry land, where the ropes were weathered by wind and sun. When the clouds soaked it with rain, the ropes would readily collapse and rot away. In the same way, when a mendicant is committed to development, their fetters readily collapse and rot away. Yes, that's another fabulous illustration of the way it works. So what do you reckon the Buddha was responding to then that caused him to offer this discourse? Dave, hello.
I think it was impatience with progress.
I don't know why I'm laughing so much when you say that, Dave.
Don't be mean.
Oh, you're not. Oh, I think there are plenty. Oh, Liz, you want to get in on the act too? Go on. What do you want to say? You have to unmute.
Yeah, I want to say the same as Dave. Impatient with the progress, and how do I know? Can I know? I must know. All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Or the lack of progress, really, or the lack of apparent progress.
Yes, this is because it takes time.
Yeah.
And I mean, how long have you got? How long are you willing to give it?
Mm.
You know, it's faith, isn't it? It's the spiritual faculty of faith.
There's something about the chicken sitting on the nest as well, that she kind of knows through experience over the years of doing it that it's going to be okay, and the eggs are going to hatch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you can see how the absence of faith then causes mispractice.
Yeah.
I've got to make this happen.
Yeah.
Because it's not happening by itself. So you put more energy in, then you get a headache. It's like,
Yeah.
And yet, and because the instruction is so, it's not special. It's just rest content with what is and note what arises. Well, anyone can do that. That's the whole point. It's not special because anyone could do it. If anyone can do it, it can't be special, can it?
No.
And because I'm not doing anything special, I wanted the spiritual path to be something really, really special. And yet the outcome of investigating in that way is to realize that it's all special. So this is the infinite mystery expressing itself in all these magical ways. Life really is magical. And so that's the extent of our ignorance. And so, but I keep coming back to the same. I mean, I remember the exact moment I was sitting in the shrine room, meditating, trying, pushing, pulling, etc. And then for some reason, it occurred to me that all I had to do was just sit here and wait for the next thing to arise and just note it. At which point, I knew that I was going to make an end of suffering. I knew I was going to come to understand because, all I have to do, this is all I have to do. This is all that's being asked of me. An adequate response to the arising of phenomena, which is just mindfully noting it. And I don't know why, but I made the connection that the entirety of the path would get done just doing that. Yeah. And because that's where the balance of the energy is, and that feels so delightful because you've suddenly had the whole burden of having to keep all these eggs in there. You've had that burden of trying to get the path done magically removed in that moment. Now all I have to do is just wait for the next object to arise. And it's not as if they're in short supply. And each and every single one of them is transient. Each and every single one of them is arising on conditions. And so you do a little bit of study as you're going along, and you practice, and you listen to the lectures, and gradually as you go along the insight path, you realize you know more and more and more about what you're being told in a lecture. And now it's only the last 10 minutes or the last 5 minutes that's still baffling you. And you realize, indeed, there is development, but I can't trace it. I can't say, well, I developed there, and then I developed there, and then I developed there. It's like this whole development is like this, it almost just, I mean, when I finished the training, I could not believe that I had just successfully walked the Noble Eightfold Path. I was like, I haven't done anything. All I've done is just sit quietly with my eyes closed. It's not just sitting quietly with your eyes closed. It's contentment with whatever you're doing. It's contentment with whatever activity. It's taking joy in whatever activity you're engaged with. If you take joy in the activity you're engaged with, you're not looking for happiness elsewhere. And joy in the activity naturally leads on to mindfulness of that activity. And really, if you're being mindful of the activity and all the elements that are taking place in that activity, and you're just noting them, you're not trying to get anywhere, you fulfill all those 37 requisites of enlightenment, all of them. And whatever it is that you have to learn about defilements, you will learn about defilements. Whatever it is that you have to learn about the three characteristics, transience, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self, you will learn all about them. That learning will take place, irrespective. So, yeah. All right. Talking of things that are cooked, I think I'm a bit cooked now. Is there any other aspect to this that anyone would like to talk about? Do you think we've successfully covered it? Dave?
I just want to say, I just thought that was fantastic, Paul. Really, really enjoyed it. Really, really helpful.
Great. Thanks, Dave. It was Dave's suggestion for this sutta. So
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
Mark.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it reminded me of the guidance around how much practice, how much reading, how much reflection. So 80% practice, 10% reading, 10% reflection, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yes. I play with the numbers a little bit, but essentially, yeah, it's that vast majority of your input is simply in the mindful noting. But you have to know what you're mindfully noting. So it is helpful to know 4 foundations of mindfulness. It is helpful to know how to balance the mind. So it is helpful to know the spiritual faculties. It is helpful to know the 7 factors of enlightenment, because you can make subtle,
Yeah, but just reading those lists over and over again isn't gonna do it, right?
No, it isn't. But I think everyone should at least know the Noble Eightfold Path. At the very least.
I think everyone does. I think everyone's a bit shy.
Everyone's a bit shy. Yeah, I understand. But yeah, great. Yeah, 80% practice, 10% intellectual study, 10% wise reflection. You get the job done. As long as that 80% is this balance of, and I'd say that balance it's up to about 95% resting content, 5% investigation. But that investigation is hugely important. It's not like an add-on 5%. It's like, it's hugely important. But yeah, so it's not as hard as so many people seem to want to make out, essentially. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there tonight, if that's all right with everyone, because yeah, I'm both cooked and scrambled. Thanks everyone for your contribution.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you a lot, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Paul.
Thank you.